Hello everyone, this is part 53 of What If Naruto Passed the Genin test, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Sasuke's jaw would have fallen to the floor were it not so tightly stuck to his skull. What did you just say? He asked, again without realizing that he's spoken. Since when could you open one, much less 8 of those damnable things? All of the other leaders present watched Sakura carefully as the kunoichi gathered herself. None wanted to show any joy at the revelation, as the thought of such a was nothing to be merry over, but neither did anyone want to resist the idea of a potentially unstoppable counter to Akatsuki's current edge. Shikamaru especially took care to guard his expression, though it made his stomach turn and his mind sour to do so. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and made a point not to look at Sakura, not sure what he should feel. Sakura grinned, as much to herself as to Sasuke when she addressed him. It was Tsunade who taught me to open the first 2, making me promise never to reveal that the first gates are part of the secret to our enormous strength. I don't think that promise really stands up to the current circumstances though. So when did you learn to open the other 6? Sasuke pushed. Don't tell me that Lee character showed you how. Yeah, said Sakura. I wanted to get stronger after you and Naruto left, so I went to Guy and Lee and they showed me how to open up to 6. After that I figured out the 7th and 8th on my own. I've never used them, but I know the exact steps of the process. Not going to happen, said Sasuke. There are other ways to beat Itachi. You don't have to K yourself. The windowless room's air seemed to thicken, though the lamps overhead shone just as brightly as when Gaara had first lit them. The leaders from the other countries began to look around at each other again, none quite sure what they should say. It was the Wind Daimyo who spoke first. It's a big S, said the tall man with the titan hair. Are you sure you want to go through with it? Sasuke shook his head before Sakura could respond. I said it's not going to happen, he growled. We're not going to someone on an altar because the rest of us are too afraid to fight one man. Gaara spoke up and turned to Sasuke, his gaze icy. You have no authority over any of us here, said the Kazekage to the Uchiha. Frankly, Sasuke-san, your being here is a privilege and you seem to forget that. Sasuke turned quickly on Gaara as murmurs began to spring up all over the room. I don't answer to anyone but the Hokage, said the Uchiha, and right now that is Naruto. Naruto gave me authority over his subordinates, said the Kazekage, earning himself an angry glare from Sasuke. Don't misjudge your place, Uchiha. And don't think that I've forgotten where you come from or with whom you've worked in the past. Sakura's decision is her own, and frankly, this might be our only chance. You have no right to try and convince her to alter her mind. Go to hell, Sasuke barked. Sakura's committing wouldn't do anything other than take out one of Akatsuki's generals. They'll have more. But none as strong as Itachi, countered the woman from the noodle country. Uchiha Itachi seems to be the greatest threat to all of us. Growled the man from the Fang country. He wiped his hand across his forehead once despite there not being any sweat to dab away. If the kid wants to get herself ked saving all of our asses, I have nothing against it. I say go for it. It's our best chance. Not no but hell no, said Sasuke. This is unacceptable. Gaara interrupted with a gesture of his hand. Sakura-san, he said politely, ignoring Sasuke. It makes me uncomfortable to do so, but you have a great power then, something that could defeat Itachi and give us a real chance in this fight. I realize what I'm requesting of you, but I must ask on behalf of us all. Shikamaru's gaze lowered to the table and his eyebrows furrowed. His chest had been quickly tightening the past seconds, and not because of the dissension forming between Sasuke and Gaara. That political thorn was nothing to him. This is bulls, muttered Sasuke to himself. Gaara, you're a snake. I was planning on it anyway, said the kunoichi, looking down at the table and avoiding eye contact with anyone. Using the 8th gate, that is, even before the war with Orochimaru was over, I knew it could end for me like that. I'll do it. Sakura, muttered Sasuke, his tone dropping. Don't do this. Don't worry, said Sakura, turning to Sasuke and smiling but closing her eyes as not to look at him. It's something I'm willing to do, for the sake of the world. It's a small price to pay for a shining new place. What? Muttered the Uchiha. Shikamaru drew in a quick and quiet breath, thinking that he understood now. Well, that settles that then, said the daimyo of the wind. Sakura Dono, he made a point to emphasize his respect for the kunoichi, will work as our counter to Uchiha Itachi. This also gives us a facet of the upcoming battle to plan around. The daimyo paused briefly to turn to Sakura and bow to her slightly, an action everyone else in the room quickly mirrored to varying extents. It was quite possibly the first time the daimyo had ever bowed to anyone not equal to his standing. The rest of the briefing consisted of Gaara, the daimyo, Sakura and the leaders of the other forces laying out a battle plan to which neither Sasuke nor Shikamaru paid much attention. Both ninja knew they would play only minor roles anyway. They instead stared at Sakura in differing and fluctuating degrees of disbelief and fear. More than once Sasuke opened his mouth to say something, but each time he fell short of words. Shikamaru began to brood, not bothering to wonder why this sudden prospect weighed so heavily on him. That bastard, thought Shikamaru, an uncharacteristic amount of venom in his mind. Naruto, this is all your fault and I'm not going to forgive you for it. If Sakura SS here, it will be on your head. I never should have trusted you, not after Kiri. You're probably still making some play for power and Sakura is just another pawn standing between you and total control. Snake, Sasuke thought, turning to look at Gaara. I thought he had some dignity about him, that he valued the people around him. Turns out he's just an opportunist and a coward, throwing someone he sees as a dog against the enemy without any hesitation. Sasuke's thoughts began to darken in timbre. I didn't fight for 3 years to see my friends again just to have them all said around me. The Earth Daimyo should be here within the hour, said Anshin responding to Gaara's query, that is of course assuming that all is still on schedule. Good, the Kazekage said flatly, as soon as he gets here we can finalize all of this. And get some answers, said the representative from the bird country. I want to know how that man knew all of this was happening and how to contact each of us when we had all retreated into hiding. Gaara nodded. Until he gets here, all of you are free to move about sooner as you please. Your troops, I'm afraid, must still wait outside the walls until the Earth Daimyo arrives and explains what is going on. Don't trust us? Asked the representative from the Fang country. He was grinning in sarcasm, knowing full well that a man in Gaara's position could take no chances. I trust everyone in this room, said the Kazekage. However, I'm afraid that no matter how much you all may vouch for your men, I cannot confirm beyond any doubt that one of them isn't a spy for Akatsuki. I will however have supplies taken out to them immediately. Everyone around the table, already standing as there were no chairs, turned and began to slowly walk towards the door. The 3 female representatives all filed by a stationary Sakura, making a point to pat her on the shoulder as they passed or offer some thanks or show of condolence. The 2 men from the Claw and Fang went out of their way to walk past her and thank her for her s. To all of them Sakura smiled, seemingly happy, though she made no eye contact with any of them and kept her grateful remarks short and as to the point as she could. The Wind Daimyo was the last to pass by her, stopping in front of her after everyone else aside from Shikamaru had left the room. Sakura Dono, he probed, grabbing her attention. Sakura bowed to the daimyo and then waited respectfully for him to speak. You don't have to go through with this if you don't want to, said the daimyo. It is completely up to you. Sakura shook her head, then looked between Shikamaru and the daimyo once. It's my duty, said the kunoichi. You see, her voice sombered. I made a promise not too long ago, so much has happened since then, but I promised someone that I would do everything in my power to help bring about a shining new world where everyone could live in peace. Shikamaru's jaw locked and his teeth began to grind, despite his still cool exterior. The way I see it, continued the kunoichi, Itachi is the worst kind of threat to that dream of a new world. If I can remove him and make the dream easier to achieve, then my life is a small price to pay. The daimyo smiled. His young but experienced and war-hardened face lifted and he bowed to her again, low this time. It is a rare quality, he said when he stood again, to be so willing to lay down your life for a dream. I hope it doesn't come down to your having to do this, he continued. I really do hope we can find some other way, but your courage is striking. You honor me with your presence. What? Asked the kunoichi, a little taken back and suddenly blushing without being aware of it. The daimyo smiled again and walked past her. If you'll excuse me, he said. I must prepare my men. I sense that even with all of these suddenly revealed gains, the crane is still going to present us with the greatest challenge of our lives. It may be that very few, if any, of us are fated to survive the coming campaign. Sakura Dono, the daimyo paused for only the briefest moment. If by chance we both make it out of this alive, I mean to say that if all of us as a group can defeat Akatsuki and the crane, I would be honored to have your company at my fortress sometime in the future, said the daimyo, quietly but with an air of confidence. Sakura paused for a moment. It would be my pleasure, she said, a little surprised, her tone lifting. With no signs of hesitation, the daimyo turned back to face her, glancing at the silent Shikamaru in the corner but paying him no real mind. Don't use that power of yours unless there is absolutely no other choice, he said. I should very much like to know you better once this is all over. Sakura suddenly realized that she couldn't speak past the lump that appeared in her tea. Instead, she only nodded and looked away as the daimyo turned on his heel, bid her goodbye for now, and strode quickly from the room. As silently as ever, Shikamaru stepped out of the corner of the room and walked up beside Sakura, who still stood in the same place, watching the now empty hallway beyond the door. Sakura, probed the Nara. Yes, Sakura said quickly, turning to face Shikamaru and collecting herself. Yes, what is it? She tried to be polite but still spoke too quickly. Shikamaru took a moment to gather exactly what he was thinking, a moment that Sakura took to collect her own thoughts and, for now, put her brief exchange with the young daimyo out of her thoughts. Sakura, I don't think you should go through with this, said Shikamaru. Opening all 8 gates is S. There are other ways we could K-Itachi, but I think we both know why you want to do it this way. Sakura grimaced only a little, hating the tone Shikamaru was striking, mostly because she knew what was going through his mind. Don't, said the kunoichi. Do not go there with me, she said quickly. The lump that had just vacated her tea began to return. You're the one who needs to not go there, said the Anbu specialist. Don't think I don't understand what you're thinking. You got hurt and now you think killing yourself is the only way to get away from it. Stop here, said Sakura, her tone becoming colder and colder as she took a few steps away. Stop before you say something you really regret. No, said the Nara. Either listen to me or arrest me, but I'm not going to sit by while you do something stupid. Sakura, Naruto is a lying worm. You may have been in love with him for a while, but you of all people should know he's not worth S4. It's not Naruto, said Sakura, growing almost angry as her tone took on a growling resonance. Like hell it's not, said Shikamaru, losing his characteristic cool. Don't try to hide it. He hurt you and now you want to S because of it. This isn't like you, Shikamaru, said the steward, trying to change the subject. Stop. No, said the Anbu specialist. This is wrong and I'm not going to prance around the issue. What you're trying to do is stupid. Naruto isn't worth S4. It's not Naruto, shouted Sakura, snapping, lashing out and slapping Shikamaru squarely across the face. Shikamaru took a stumbling step back. Sakura hadn't used the strength Tsunade taught her, but the slap still knocked him back and completely off balance. Both ninja waited for a moment, observing just how angry they had made the other so quickly. Sakura's face was red and her breath was uneven. Shikamaru now had a growing crimson patch on his left cheek. Don't do this, said Shikamaru in a defeated tone, dropping his hands and averting his eye. I was there, at Kiri. I saw the S that was Naruto's new world. That can't be what you're fighting for. It's not Naruto, Sakura repeated, calmer now but still flushed. It's the peace he wants to bring about. I love him but he's not the reason I'm willing to do this. It's all of you, my friends and the rest of the world. I want to put an end to war and make a place where everyone can live happily. If I have to S to achieve it, then so be it. I would regret it forever if I stood by and let that dream S. And the only thing I would regret is losing you, said Shikamaru, causing Sakura to stumble. Both ninja paused and watched the other again for a long minute. I've served with you, either directly or otherwise, for 3 years now, said Shikamaru, closing his eye and dropping his shoulders. I've seen how you can be strong and kind even when you don't want to be and now I finally have a dream I'm not willing to let S. Sakura stopped cold, her icy expression beginning to melt. Shikamaru, she said quietly. Don't, said the ninja, trying to regain his composure but sounding only sad. He turned so he wouldn't face her directly. I don't care what it takes, but I'll do anything. Just don't do this. Shikamaru balled his hands into fists. Can you teach me to open them? He asked. I'll do it for you if that's the only way we can win this. I'll fight Itachi. Sakura shook her head. I wouldn't let you even if there were time to teach you, she said. I said I'd do anything, said Shikamaru, his poise crumbling and his voice breaking once. His eye already glistened. I don't care if I have to fight Itachi by myself. I don't want to lose you. Sakura waited for a moment, hesitating, then walked forward and put her arms around Shikamaru gently, but still respectfully as a peer, nothing more. The ninja just let his hands hang at his sides. I'm sorry, said Shikamaru. I wish I'd said something before. I do too, said Sakura. Shikamaru, I've always been able to count on you to do your duty, now you have to let me do mine. If some other way to win this comes up then we'll go with that, but right now the gates are the best chance we have. Shikamaru didn't answer but reached up and returned Sakura's embrace. Maybe I should have been the one to say this a long time ago, said Sakura, but you've always been one of my closest friends, Shikamaru. I should have treated you like it. Shikamaru looked up and took only a small step back so he could see Sakura's face. That's it then, he said, more calm than before but still with a quivering in his voice. A friend is all I can be. Sakura looked up at him, strong now because she had to be. For now, she said, that's all we can be. Shikamaru took a stee's breath and nodded once. He understood. Right, he said quietly. I got it. Sakura smiled and stepped back out of the hug. I'm glad you're not angry, she said, trying to lighten the mood. Yeah, said Shikamaru, flatly, but with a small, albeit forced, grin on the edge of his lip. It was really all he could muster, Sakura guessed. Plus, said the pink-haired Kunoichi, I don't like it at all when you're this blunt. The Shikamaru I know is always so subtle and precise. She grinned a little and tried to lighten him up, but Shikamaru didn't smile back. SC. Naruto and Haben lay prone atop the tall shard of rock jutting out of the earth and overlooking the pass beneath them. Had Naruto had to guess, he might have thought that this place was straight from the worst nightmare of a madman's mind. The final point of passing from the river country to the wind was a hellish place where the altitude land of Suna's desert met the lowlands of this barren plain of the river's territory. The result was a thin and steady ramp of clay and earth, walled on either side by sheer faces of red rock, that slowly made its way into the wind. The path at the bottom of the ravine was thin but grew steadily wider towards the top. Naruto and Haben watched as thousands of troops marched in small phalanxes up the narrow pass, which went on for nearly a mile. They lay on one of the highest ledges on the southern face of rock and counted the numbers of enemies. It's a pity we don't have an army here, said Naruto quietly. Yes, said Haben. This would make the perfect choke point. Look at those men. They're marching shoulder to shoulder in a formation only 5 men thick. We could probably hold this pass indefinitely with 100 men. That, said Naruto pointing, would be our only problem. Haben followed Naruto's gesture to a small ledge of stone jutting out of the north wall above the slowly progressing columns of troops. Uchiha Itachi and another ninja wearing a red and black robe stood on the ledge and watched the troops. True, said the ninja in the mask. But it looks like we have 2 things working in our favor. Yeah, Naruto muttered, all of the enemy troops stayed in one group and they only have 2 ninja leading them. Haben nodded. The army is smaller than I expected though. I count 10 groups of 350 soldiers. It seems like there should be 500 more, don't you think? Naruto nodded. Perhaps Itachi sent him ahead in smaller groups to scout out the way. If he knew he was coming this way, the last thing he would want is to be caught off guard by some ambush. Here that would have wasted his army completely. We should probably get going. These soldiers are going to take at least the rest of the afternoon to get through this pass and we have 500 other ninja to find before we can return to Suna. Time is most definitely short, said Haben, slowly getting to his feet, his now tightened robe shuffling only slightly. Naruto mirrored his actions, making every effort not to draw attention. We, Harbin gasped as the rock beneath his feet crumbled under his weight and the entire ledge on which he and Naruto stood began to crumble and fall apart, filling the entire pass with the loud clattering of breaking stone. Naruto hisses, reaching out and grabbing Harbin's gloved hand, pulling the falling ninja from thin air and simultaneously grabbing onto the craggy rock behind him to keep from falling. Every soldier in the valley looked up and saw the two ninja clinging to the face, as did Itachi and Kisame, instantly locking onto the source of the noise. Harbin reeled around and grabbed hold of the rock, freeing Naruto's hand and looked down into the pass. Heavy stones, many hundreds of pounds each set into the formation below, cutting one column of troops in half and burying a dozen victims in rubble 20 feet deep. Naruto swore again as the rock in his hand crumbled into dust and slipped out into the open air. The blonde ninja grabbed for his sword, sped it from its sheath with a piercing ring, and twirled its point towards the cliff. With a grunt he drove the blade deep into the rock to anchor himself. Naruto stuck tight to the cliff as the blade found solid stone beneath the instable surface. "Gotta go," said Harbin to Naruto just as Itachi and Kisame leapt from their ledge up towards the intruders. The blonde and the ninja in the mask were several stories above the ground, but Itachi and his partner bounded off the rocks nimbly, gaining altitude quickly. Harbin hurriedly jumped from the wall and landed on the opposite face, gaining height and jumping again in an attempt to outrun the pursuers. Naruto jerked at the blade, but it stuck in the rock and he couldn't pull it out. He barked, trying again with no success to free the sword. "Leave it," shouted Harbin. "Come on." With another muffled curse, Naruto jumped away from the rock and rebounded off the opposite face, quickly catching up to Harbin, but not gaining any distance on Itachi or Kisame, who were coming closer every second. Naruto and the masked ninja climbed quickly to the top of the two ledges some 200 feet above the confused soldiers beneath, jumping farther and farther with each foot they moved skywards, needing to compensate for the widening of the ravine. They flung themselves up onto the stable ground and glanced quickly around. The plain on which they found themselves was only one such growth of the earth in the thin mountain range running along the wind's border, and dropped off again about a mile away where the true desert of the wind country began. "We've got to move," said Naruto, aiming himself towards the southwest and taking off with Harbin hot on his heels. The ground at Naruto's feet exploded up in a shower of dirt and debris as a shape like a man, but much larger, erupted out of the earth. The figure was blue, wore a black cloak, and carried a massive bandage-wrapped weapon that swung at Naruto with terrifying speed. The Uzumaki without any indecision jumped and flipped upside down in midair, planting his hand on the weapon as it passed beneath him and simultaneously reaching for his sword. Only then did Naruto remember. His sword was protruding from the canyon wall. The blonde did all he could think to do. He flipped himself around again as the bandages passed beneath him and lunged for his attack, his fish-like face. His fist connected with a solid crack, but not with Kisame's skull. Naruto's knuckles popped loudly as he struck the ninja's uplifted arm. Naruto didn't falter though, instead throwing all of his weight against his fist to throw Kisame off balance. The Akatsuki ninja grunted at the sudden increase of force and stumbled backwards. Without bothering to survey his surroundings, Naruto pressed his hands together and flew through a series of seals. Instantly the blonde ninja disappeared and reappeared in a blast of smoke behind Kisame, his hands already separating as he finished his next jutsu. All around in more blasts of smoke a dozen copies of Naruto appeared and lunged for Kisame simultaneously while one of the blondes stayed back. Kisame grinned, baring his triangular teeth, and swept his weapon around in a wicked arc. The bandages flew from Samehada and exposed its scaly surface as the weapon shaved through each clone as though it were nothing, banishing the copies. There had been enough time though. Naruto, who was now a dozen yards away, slapped his hands on the ground, causing a ripple of blue energy to blast towards Kisame through the sand. The fishy ninja had just completed his 360-degree spin when he saw Naruto. He didn't have time to leap away as a spear of hardened sand exploded up beneath him, and skewered Kisame straight through the chest. Naruto grinned as the ninja opposite him faltered, but his joy quickly became horror when Kisame turned the color of the sand all around, and disintegrated just as quickly as the spear. "Oh." Naruto breathed quietly, feeling something press against the back of his neck. "Naruto-kun," said Itachi, pressing the tip of his kunai into Naruto only enough to draw the smallest drop of blood that ran down and seeped into the Uzumaki's collar. "I would recommend that you not move. I would much prefer to take you alive." Naruto watched as the real Kisame, not the Bunshin, crawled over the edge of the canyon some several yards ahead of him, and stood tall and menacing. "Not bad, kid," said the ninja with the blue skin. "If that had been the real me, Itachi might have needed to look for a new partner." Quickly, Naruto glanced all around. Harbin was nowhere to be found. He took a quiet breath as Itachi lowered the kunai. Boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram, snake, Naruto began to quote in his mind, running through exactly which seals he would have to perform. "So?" asked the Uchiha in his usual monotone. "Naruto-kun, perhaps we should be going. Although, I am curious as to where that friend of yours disappeared to." "It's of little consequence though, I suppose." Naruto grinned. "It's always the ones in the masks you can't trust," he muttered, catching the quick flicker of movement behind Kisame as the blue ninja walked towards him. Itachi raised one eyebrow but quickly shrugged and took one step back from Naruto. "You're going to get down on your knees," he said. "All right," said the blonde, kneeling in front of the Uchiha and putting his hands together between his knees. "Let's try to keep this civil." Itachi grinned. Only an instant later did the ground between the Uchiha and Naruto and beneath Itachi disappear entirely and without any sound or explosion, leaving a more than 50 feet deep that Itachi, unable to control gravity, fell into with a cry of surprise. Naruto took full advantage of the diversion and lunged for Kisame, charging forwards like cheetah and rearing one hand back as Kisame faltered, off guard. With a screaming roar of wind, the Rasengan whirled into existence and grew in size to a diameter of more than a meter. Kisame disappeared in a flash of sand and appeared behind Naruto, his sword already unwrapped and poised to strike, but Naruto with an almost malicious smile turned on his heel and swung his arm towards the Akatsuki ninja. The sly vortex of chakra warped outwards, not leaving Naruto's hand, but twisting through the air like a serpent towards Kisame, who could only reposition his sword in defense in time. The now spiraling Rasengan drove into Kisame's defense with the force of a charging bull. The sword's scales began to twist and writhe as they absorbed the vast energy fueling the attack, but Kisame was driven back, his heels dug into the earth and pushed up small mounds behind him as Naruto attacked. "No way," Kisame muttered, seeing the blue scales beginning to heat up and glow orange. "No thing way." Naruto jumped forward and shoved his hand against the weapon, compressing the entire Rasengan between his palm and the scales, filling the air with the screech. Immediately the sword exploded in a flurry of scales and metal shrapnel. The force of the blast propelled the already airborne Naruto back towards the edge of the cliff, where he landed in the dirt and rolled headfirst over the precipice before catching himself and clinging for dear life just below the edge. Kisame was simply flung onto his back with a loud thump. "Ouch," muttered Kisame, getting to his knees and looking behind him. Itachi must have fallen quite a ways, the Uchiha had yet to reappear. "I swear I'm going to," the ninja stopped cold and his beady eyes widened. Behind the kneeling member of Akatsuki stood Harbin, wearing instead of his usual sandy robes a black cloak splotched with red clouds. His bare and ghostly pale hand rested gently on the back of Kisame's end just where his spine connected to his skull. As a thin red line of blood began to trickle out of Kisame's nose and from the corner of his mouth, Harbin's white mask washed over with orange and the smooth porcelain surface warped and spiraled into a corkscrew design, leaving only one red Sharingan exposed. "Sorry Kisame," said Madara as Kisame fell forwards, face first in the dirt. "It's nothing personal but you've played your part." Madara turned to the pit he had created in the earth when one arm clawed over the top. At the same instant Naruto finished his recovery and pulled himself up onto the plateau again. "Time to go," said Madara, disappearing without any indication of his ever having been there, and without any sign of his leaving. Naruto and Itachi both gained the plateau at the same time. They simultaneously glanced between one another and an ostensibly very Kisame, who was now pulling in his own dark blood. They each looked away from the corpse at one another again. "How did you do that?" asked Itachi, an uncharacteristic edge of trepidation in his voice as he tried to understand what was going on. "You simply eliminated the ground from being. How?" Naruto grinned, not wanting to give away his own ignorance. "That must have been Harbin," thought the blonde, pressing his hands together in front of his chest. "Let's hope he's on his way back to Suna to report all of this to them." Boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram, snake. He thought as he performed the seals in lightning succession and slapped his hands down on the ground at his either side. In two bursts of red flame, a pair of large foxes, each one 3 feet tall at the shoulder and very lean in their builds, exploded into existence. Kyuubi's reinforcements looked quickly between each other, Naruto, and Itachi, then nodded very slightly and began snarling ferally, locking their fiery silver eyes on Itachi. Their black fur began to stand up on end and the air around them glowed red with the copious amount of chakra they had been given. Good, Naruto noted. I'm not feeling anything from that chakra. It looks like they'll be able to use it freely, lucky since I'm already beginning to run a little low on my own. Itachi sighed and closed his black eyes. I supposed it might wind up like this. You always are so stubborn, Naruto-kun. The Uchiha reopened his eyes, revealing his Mangekyo Sharingan. I'm curious to see how the power of the Kyuubi no Yoko will stand up to the hidden talents of the ancient Uchiha. Itachi grinned as he looked between Naruto and his two fox allies. In a flash, Itachi charged forward, drawing a kunai and lunging for Naruto's tea. Naruto jumped to the side to avoid the attack as Itachi rocketed towards him, but one of the foxes jumped between the two ninja, fangs bared to bite. The second fox whirled around as Itachi passed through the first summon like a ghost. Bunshin, thought Naruto, stopping in mid-step and spinning on his heel. Naruto saw the flash of movement behind him and instinctively reached out to stop Itachi's strike. The Uchiha had somehow materialized directly behind the startled Uzumaki, but as Naruto grabbed at Itachi's wrist he felt nothing but empty air where there should have been flesh and bone. It's another Bunshin. Naruto let the ghost of the raven-haired ninja pass through him harmlessly, though he did feel a wave of unease as the ethereal kunai passed through his end, and looked up above as yet another Itachi appeared from thin air and dropped down towards him, a katana drawn in his hand. Before Naruto could react, one of the foxes had jumped up to intercept the attacker, but the other barked a warning as a second Itachi appeared to Naruto's left and a third and fourth appeared before and behind him. All 5 of the attackers were less than 2 paces away and rushed at Naruto simultaneously. Above, the fox passed through the imaginary Itachi, its jaws clasping closed around the Bunshin's insubstantial N. Naruto reached into his cloak and spun around, flinging his hands out and spraying a wave of shuriken in all directions, each of which passed through the Itachis with no resistance. God! Naruto swore as the harmless shadows passed around him like vapors. How many will there be before the real one? Naruto looked around as the Bunshins disappeared, but Itachi was nowhere to be seen. Shouted the blonde as a hand phased through the ground and took a very solid hold on his ankle. A sustentative Itachi rose out of the ground and jerked Naruto off balance, slamming his knee into his stomach. Itachi wrapped both hands around Naruto's tea and squeezed. Naruto's end popped beneath the pressure and immediately his air was cut off. Impulsively Naruto tried to grab at Itachi's wrists, but his hands passed through without touching a thing. Itachi grinned as Naruto tried to kick him in the thigh and again in the groin, but the blonde's foot found only empty air. Naruto looked around to the foxes, but from nowhere a dozen copies of Itachi had appeared and engaged the summons. The air began to fill with explosions and waves of fire as the foxes would attack a clone with a blast of red chakra from their wide maws or tear into one of the clones with their fangs, banishing it in a puff of smoke. The animals, however, seemed oblivious to Naruto's situation. You were no challenge at all, said Itachi, tightening his grip on Naruto's windpipe. Naruto groped at Itachi's fingers, but he found nothing to grab. When he reared back and tried to punch Itachi in the jaw, his fist connected with nothing. He was being throttled by a ghost and his world was beginning to go black. Naruto growled and held one hand back behind his head. A roaring wind coalesced in his palm as the Rasengan took shape and he shoved it forward, straight through Itachi's face. No effect. Itachi merely grinned and began shaking Naruto as if he were trying to speed the process of choking the life out of him. As the edges of his vision continued to blacken, the Rasengan faded into nothing and Naruto dropped his hands to his side. He'd never guessed he'd lose so fast. A screaming pain in his ankle made the ninja take a deep breath and scream. Suddenly the Itachi throttling Naruto disappeared and Naruto collapsed to his hands and knees, gasping for breath. Naruto looked up just in time to see the real Itachi, several yards away, dodging a bolt of red energy flung at him by one of the huge foxes. Beside Naruto was the other fox, the tips of its teeth reddened with Naruto's blood. Apologies, said the fox nearest Naruto, speaking directly to the boy's mind in a surprisingly civilized tone. Our opponent distracted my sister and me with shadow clones while he used an illusion to trick you into thinking you were S. You simply stopped breathing, sir. I had no choice but to break you out of it. It's alright, said Naruto, getting to his feet, just as Itachi landed a safe distance away and the second fox returned in a bound to Naruto's side. Naruto steezed himself between his two guards and faced down Itachi. Damn, who is this guy really? Naruto thought. There's no way this was anything more than an effort to gauge my strength, but even that nearly killed me. He still hasn't even used both hands. Naruto noted that Itachi's left arm still hung unused from the center of his cloak. Naruto-kun, said Itachi. I don't want to hurt you. If you just come back to the Rain Village, I can promise you that my employer means you no harm. You are in fact key to his plans to bring about world peace. This fighting is pointless, but if you choose to continue, I will subdue you. Naruto's only answer was to drop down into a more ready position, one hand in front of him and the other hand behind him. He tried to recall some of the fundamental principles of Gentle Fist that Neji had taught him years ago. Maybe I can use some Gyuken to throw him off balance, Naruto thought, and maybe my Gyuken will be so messed up he won't know what to make of it. Naruto couldn't help grinning at that last thought. There will be no more games from here on in, said Itachi, removing his black and red robe and casting it aside with a gesture of his hand. Beneath the cloak were simple black pants and a matching shirt with a netted underlay. And neither will I accept you surrender if you do not offer it now. Naruto shook his head once, and without a second's pause Itachi disappeared in a whirl of leaves. The Uzumaki ninja braced for an attack, but the 5 Uchiha ninja who appeared all around vanished in puffs of smoke as a wave of red chakra exploded from the male fox. Show off, chided the second summon in a surprisingly female voice. Naruto rolled to one side as Itachi came at him from behind. Seemingly from nothing, the Uchiha had unsheathed a katana almost as tall as himself. The blade came to within a hair's breadth of shearing off Naruto's right arm, but the blonde struck out and slammed his open palm into Itachi's stomach, sending a lance of blue chakra out his back. Move, shouted one of the foxes as the Itachi clone flashed a blinding white. Naruto leapt away as quickly as he could, jumping face first into the dirt and covered his head with his hands just as the clone exploded with a bone-rattling boom. Not only smoke, but kunai and shuriken flew out of the exploding clone, a dozen missiles that sailed at supersonic speeds, splitting the air with little pops. Naruto felt one of them graze his calf, drawing a thin hot line in his skin, that scabbed over, instantly cauterized by the heat of the metal. There was not even time to get up off the ground. Another Itachi appeared out of thin air above Naruto and came down at him with another katana. Naruto rolled onto his back as Itachi flipped the sword point down and espered at Naruto. The Uzumaki slapped his palms together on either side of the blade and caught the weapon between his hands. The cold metal opened his skin with no resistance and warm blood began to trickle down Naruto's wrists as the tip stopped an inch from his chest. Jerking around, Naruto kicked Itachi's leg out from underneath him. At the same instant, one of the identical foxes swiped at him with wickedly sharp claws. The Uchiha fell off balance and found his side torn open by the foxes. This clone also flashed white. Naruto rolled away as the clone exploded with another deafening explosion, this time throwing out a thick and obscuring purple mist along with the shockwave that rolled over the plateau all around like a choking miasma. Naruto, his head still ringing from the bang, tried to draw a breath, but found his efforts excruciating as he let even the tiniest amount of the stuff into his lungs. It burned like fire and made him cough. Naruto, shouted the feminine fox. Jump. Get above this plague. I shall clear it. Naruto didn't hesitate, but jumped, making his muscles burn for lack of air, but clearing the ceiling of mist with the bound. He took a single satisfying breath. A tiny twitch below him made the blonde turn in the nick of time to spot Itachi, or at least an attacker that looked like Itachi, spring out of the mist, aimed like a spear to intercept him. Bracing for the impact, Naruto gasped in horror as a wave of black fire exploded out from Itachi and rolled towards Naruto like a blast of napalm. I can't block Amaterasu, Naruto realized, remembering Sasuke's similar technique. Rasengan, shouted the blonde, putting both hands out in front of him and summoning the technique as the black fire raced towards him. The shining vortex of energy leapt into existence in Naruto's hands and quickly grew larger, nearly as large as Naruto himself before the black fire struck it. Beneath, and as Amaterasu rebounded and scattered off the Rasengan like water falling on a dashing potter's wheel, a wave of red chakra rolled off of the foxes and pushed the mist away like a fan. Neither fox noticed Itachi hanging in midair for the swirling ball of energy holding their master suspended 20 feet above their heads. Naruto heaved and shoved the Rasengan forward, flinging it at Itachi, and beginning to fall the second it left his hands. He expected the Rasengan to slam into the Itachi and dispel the clone, or for it to dodge away as he dropped to the ground, panting and sweating, but Itachi merely waited as the mass of chakra flew towards him. The Uchiha held out his hands and angled his fingers as though he were ready to catch a passed ball. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as Itachi caught the Rasengan, stopping it in midair, angling it towards Naruto, and throwing it towards him. Naruto cursed, jumping up and leaping as the foxes sprinted to either side. The massive Rasengan, no less than 5 feet across, slammed into the ground and sped itself apart upon impact, filling the air with millions of tiny razors that flew in all directions. Naruto fell onto his back to avoid all that he could, but a multitude of the blades skittered across his chest and legs, tearing up his pants and cloak. A few flitted in front of his face, opening up tiny cuts in his skin that quickly turned red, though they weren't deep enough to truly bleed. The male fox jumped in between the explosion and his companion, taking the brunt of the damage. Kyuubi's chakra sustained him, but most of his shaggy black fur was whipped or shaved off and fell into nothingness as thousands of tiny lesions like paper cuts appeared all over his face and his side. Naruto jumped to his feet, for no sooner had the blades vanished than did Itachi renew his assault with new vigor. The Uchiha landed a dozen paces away and rushed at Naruto, vanishing as Naruto swung out to hit him, exhausted, only to reappear directly behind the Uzumaki and viciously kick him square in the back. Naruto flew forward and tumbled in the dirt as Itachi spun around and slammed the recently shaven fox with the back of his hand, knocking it to the ground. Sustaining that attack, the Rasengan, said the fox to Naruto as the summon collapsed. I'm out of chakra. I'm sorry I can't be of more help. Should the fight last long enough, summon me again in a few minutes and I'll have more chakra. Naruto nodded, getting up as the fox disappeared in a puff of red smoke. Itachi measured his position between Naruto and the growling female some feet to his left, who was obviously waiting for a cue from her master. He rolled one shoulder back, then with no warning dashed at Naruto again. Oh no, a drained Naruto thought as Itachi came within striking distance. The blonde braced for an attack, but again Itachi disappeared. Naruto turned as Itachi reappeared behind him, but again the Uchiha vanished in a flash of speed, only to appear on Naruto's left, then his right, and then behind him again. Itachi raced all around Naruto in a dozen different circles, appearing here and there within a few feet of his target and throwing Naruto completely off balance with his sword's dance-like technique. Out of nowhere, out of nothing, even as the fox rushed to Naruto's aid, a thin jet of black fire slammed into Naruto's back and enveloped his cloak in a nanosecond. Naruto reeled to throw off his cloak and tossed it to the ground just as it disintegrated into ash, just as a sandal came out of nowhere and slammed into Naruto's jaw with a loud thud. Spinning through the air from the blow, Naruto saw Itachi appear behind him, in the direction he was moving. He saw the Mangekyo spin and the black fire burst out towards him. Rasengan, Naruto mumbled, holding out both hands toward Itachi, one to slice his path and the other to hold the highly chakra-consuming shield. The blue energy fizzled in his hand as Naruto watched Amaterasu, an intense blast of it, sail his way. At the last possible instant the Rasengan appeared and deflected the black fire in a scattering as brilliant as any firework, throwing bits of flame in all directions as Naruto crashed to the ground in a heap, right beside Itachi. Itachi raised one foot and pressed it down on Naruto's knee, holding him in place as he pointed his hand towards the fox leaping at him from only a few feet away. Just as the teeth passed over his hand and ready to s his arm from its socket, Itachi's fingers snapped inside the summon's mouth. The black fox exploded internally with a blast of blue energy before disappearing in a flash of smoke. Now, Itachi said, his voice airy as his breath came in long draws. His forehead was beginning to shine with a thin layer of perspiration. Naruto-kun, I must admit you've given me a bit of a workout, but it's time we end this. You need to come with me. The Uchiha reached up and wiped the little drops of blood pooling around his bloodshot eyes away, then looked down at Naruto as the Uzumaki tried to lift his hands to throw off Itachi's foot. Naruto saw the Mangekyo flash white, then he blacked out for only a second, as though he'd blinked. Suddenly Naruto found himself hanging, suspended in midair in a very strange place. 4 ropes held both of his arms and both of his legs and suspended him above the ground in between 2 thick posts on his either side. The sky was as red as garnet, and in front of the captured Naruto stood Itachi, a katana in his hand. Before Naruto could speak or even wonder exactly what was going on or why his world was black, white, and red, Itachi espered forward, driving the sword clean up to the hilt into Naruto's stomach where he let it rest. Naruto screamed as Itachi pulled his hand back, feeling every drop of blood burn like acid as it left his body. The Uchiha pulled another katana from behind his back and, watching the blood drain from Naruto's gut as he drove the second katana into Naruto's chest, skewering the Uzumaki's lung. Again as Naruto screamed in pain, Itachi pulled yet another sword from the empty space behind him. This time he walked up beside the Ming victim and slowly forced the blade into Naruto from the side, between 2 ribs until it protruded from just beneath Naruto's opposite arm. Naruto couldn't scream at this, both of his lungs had been run through, but he still felt every second of it. With the patience of our artist Itachi, who suddenly wore his black and red robe again, drew from his garments a small dagger and stepped back in front of Naruto. He held the knife point down against one of Naruto's kneecaps. Before Naruto could even beg for mercy, Itachi rammed the crooked and rusty knife under Naruto's knee, and wrenched it back until he heard Naruto's joint pop loose. Naruto's head flopped back, his eyes wide and his mouth open in a soundless scream as Itachi pulled another knife from oblivion and slashed it into Naruto's second knee, peeling at the kneecap until Naruto's leg spasmed and the joint gave. Naruto would have given anything, his home, his allegiances, even his soul to so the pain would stop. He couldn't think to know the pain was the product of a jutsu and he should have SD long ago. All Naruto knew was that he wasn't yet S and that being alive was nothing but this torturous existence. Itachi sighed, removing a small and dull-looking knife from his pocket. "It will be over when you want it to be, Naruto-kun," said the Uchiha. Comma, 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 comma. An instant later, Naruto lay on his back, Itachi hovering over him. The Uchiha's eyes were red and bloodshot. Thin rivulets of crimson D sped from the corners of the Uchiha's mouth and from his right eye. Itachi reached up and dabbed away the blood with the back of his hand. "I must hand it to you, Naruto-kun," said Itachi, looking down at the defeated Naruto who lay utterly still aside from the occasionally tremor that shook his hands or his shoulders. "You did better than I expected. I used up nearly a third of my chakra on you. I've never seen anyone defeat Amaterasu before. Using that technique as a shield, that was very clever. You just ran out of energy." Itachi walked away from the comatose Uzumaki and picked up his Akatsuki cloak, flinging it over his shoulders and slipping his arms through the sleeves. "Now," muttered the Uchiha, deactivating his Sharingan and walking back past Naruto to the edge of the cliff where he bent down and looked into the ravine. Far beneath, the troops had begun to clear the way of rocks. With Kisame, I must decide whether to take Naruto back to reign myself or continue on my way to crush Suna. A puzzle then, as not one of the incompetent fools down there knows how to lead an army. Itachi looked up as the earth beneath his feet trembled once, shaking up the dust. He turned around to look at Naruto who lay just as silent as before. The earth shook once more but still Naruto didn't move. Earthquake? Itachi wondered. That would be the ninja's mouth snapped shut as a third tremor rocked the ground and nearly knocked him off balance. This time, however, Naruto's body jerked and spasmed violently. A red haze began to flow off the Uzumaki and envelop him like a shroud. Freedom. The word sprung from Naruto's lips as the boy's body lifted off the ground, suspended in the air by the demonic energy flowing from him. Freedom. Bad. Itachi blurted, charging forward without any indecision. He drew a razor-like knife from his cloak and aimed it directly at Naruto's teeth, flinging the dagger forward ahead of him. A tendril of energy jumped from Naruto's body and batted the knife harmlessly from the air with a metallic ring. An otherworldly growl emanated from Naruto's teeth as the chakra took the rough shape of a fox all around Naruto's body. Terrible! Exclaimed Itachi, bypassing the Sharingan and activating the Mangekyo directly. The demon's chakra has been released. I shouldn't have weakened his mind so much. Tsukiyomi was a bad idea. Naruto dropped to the ground, eyes closed, glowing with an intense red chakra, and faced Itachi. The Uchiha stopped in his tracks a pace short of Naruto and leapt back a dozen yards. Black fire exploded all around like a carpet bombing and rushed in towards the Uzumaki, hiding him completely from Itachi's view. Not satisfied, Itachi reached into his coat with both hands and flung them out again towards Naruto, throwing 10 kunai, each trailing an explosive tag towards the fire-encompassed boy. The tags caught with Amaterasu's flames and exploded in a colossal boom that threw dust and debris everywhere. Itachi raised his hands to shield his face, but watched from beneath his arm in horror as a wave of red chakra rolled out of the black flames, tossing him away from the being underneath. It was no longer Naruto Itachi saw, but a fiery demon in the shape of a man with spiked ears and a pair of eyes seemingly aflame with white light. 5 tails of energy sprung from the demon's lower back and thrashed out behind it as the demon, powering Naruto's body, dropped onto all fours and angled itself towards Itachi. His skin has boiled off, thought Itachi, his heart pounding in his ears. With Naruto unconscious, the 4th seal compromised, and Naruto's mind weakened by Tsukuyomi, there's no limit to what the Kyuubi can do. The demon fox roared, throwing its jaws open unnaturally wide and unleashing a rolling wave of superheated air and chakra towards Itachi at a speed that would disintegrate a kunai or shuriken. Itachi had no choice and no time to do anything but raise his arms and take the blast as it impacted him full force and sent him tumbling through the air. Itachi's form flew like a rag doll over the deep ravine. He would have landed on the opposite side of the gorge, had not the Kyuubi appeared in midair behind him and slashed at the Uchiha with ethereal claws. Itachi whirled around and flung out a wave of black fire. Amaterasu pushed the fox back only far enough that his claws did not SCR Itachi, though the demonic fingers passed through Amaterasu's flames as though they were only a bunchen. Itachi held himself in place with a steady release of chakra as Naruto out off Kyuubi landed on the ground a few meters below and glared up at him. This was a mistake, growled the fox as Itachi quickly retreated back to the opposite side of the gorge and landed with a quiet pat. I've defeated your flames and your illusions will fail you next. You are a man, as is anyone who interferes with my will. You will harm the kid no more. I can't let this continue, Itachi thought quickly. Naruto's Maiban resilience might allow the demon to operate at full power and with unlimited power for hours on end. I won't stand a chance, I did not want to do this. You forced my hand, muttered Itachi. He looked up at the sky and closed his eyes. Not a second later Kyuubi rocketed forward. He jumped up over the gorge and aimed himself at Itachi. The shape of Naruto's figure flashed a brilliant white as Kyuubi opened his jaws wider than he had before and rolled his en around. From the back of the fox's TA light like the sun erupted and Kyuubi roared again. A beam of boiling red chakra, so hot the earth all around Naruto and even the walls of the canyon beneath the beam instantly warped into a rolling glass and began to flow like water blasted towards Itachi. The beam slammed into Itachi and exploded like an atomic bomb, hurling fire, chakra, and molten glass in all directions, engulfing the Uchiha in a pillar of fire 100 feet wide that spiraled and burned up into the sky more than a mile overhead, towering like a tornado. Kyuubi hovered in midair as 3 more tails swirled to life behind him, not bothering to watch as the glass, now thousands of degrees in temperature, flowed like a waterfall over the edge of the canyon, igniting the air above and around it. The falls buried dozens of soldiers in the pass beneath. Lightning began to flash in the clear sky overhead, generated by the intense amounts of energy now flowing uninhibited through the atmosphere. With an ear-splitting howl, Kyuubi pointed both hands towards the pillar of fire and raised them above his head like a conductor. The upper portion of the pillar followed Naruto's hands around as he guided his chakra, rolling the pillar over the same location 100 times in and blasting what would have been left of Itachi over and over and over again. Each time the pillar struck ground, another tremor ran through the earth, and each time it lifted into the air, another peal of thunder broke overhead. Goodbye, Uchiha, chortled Kyuubi, giving up control of the pillar of fire and watching it begin to dwindle. You shall bother neither Naruto nor myself ever again. Ha! Kyuubi watched as a wave of energy rolled out from the inside of the fire pillar, banishing it and dissipating the flames like a strong wind. At ground zero, in the exact center of the target location Kyuubi had hammered with a world-breaking force, stood Itachi, hunched to nearly half his real height, bleeding from both eyes, bleeding from his mouth, nose, and ears, blood dripping from beneath his fingernails and from the missing patches of skin that wound up his arms and across his face. What the F is that? Kyuubi wondered aloud, looking not at Itachi, but at the ghostly shell that surrounded him like an enormous suit of armor. Susanoo, said Itachi, his voice grinding as the ghostly apparition repositioned itself, moving only a little the nearly invisible shield that had been in front of Itachi and raising one hand as a strange gourd appeared in its fingers. The top of the gourd popped open and a column of sake spat out, forming the shape of a sword and solidifying in midair. The fox smiled wickedly. You have overestimated yourself, laughed Kyubi, his old hubris returning. Your little shield from Kami might have protected you from me before, but you are quickly running out of chakra with which to sustain it, and the sword Totsuka will not seal me forever the way it will a human. No, it won't, muttered the Uchiha. But, Itachi leaned forward, dropping to his knees as the Susanoo shot like a bullet up towards Kyubi, twisting and wrapping around him not unlike a snake. What? Kyubi screamed in a voice more Naruto's than his own. What is this? The shield will serve well enough to immobilize you, said Itachi as Susanoo strangled Kyubi with one arm, catching the demon between its arm and the shield. And the sword, continued Itachi as Susanoo raised the weapon to strike, will seal you back into Naruto until we can get you both back to Rain. No, shouted Kyubi. Susanoo slashed downwards, driving the sword into Kyubi's forehead and out his back. Instantly all 8 tails disappeared and the red coat of chakra Naruto had been wearing vanished as though it had never existed. Beneath the armor, an ostensibly unharmed Naruto appeared, and unconscious. Kyubi's power vanished with a screaming howl. Simultaneously Susanoo was gone, and Naruto fell to the ground 2 stories below, landing not far from Itachi with a hard thud and rolling onto his stomach. Itachi waited for a moment, his breathing rough and very ragged, then got slowly to his feet and ran his hand over one of the many bleeding lesions that marred his face. 2%, muttered the Uchiha, wiping away the blood that still sped from his eyes and flicking the liquid to the ground. Fighting this devil took up all but 2% of my strength. If he had known of Susanoo being able to move autonomously, I would have been done for. Pausing for another deep breath, the Uchiha looked at Naruto with a grimace, then turned to the edge of the cliffs and exhaled. The Kyubi no Yoko preserved Naruto, the demon must be developing a bond with his host. Forget Suna, said Itachi. They can wait. Naruto has to be caged. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.